How is branding shifting now that AI is hot on the scene? Does branding even really matter anymore? Should you be building a personal brand or a corporate brand? How does your messaging and your content come into play when it comes to your branding? And what should you be focusing on most when you're in the beginning stages of building your brand? Listen, you guys, this interview was so freaking good. I sat down with Dain Walker, the CEO of Rival, Australia's fastest growing branding agency, to answer all of these questions and so much more. It is a juicy interview, so keep watching. Hey Posse, what's up? It's Alex, and I am really excited to share with you this interview with the incredible Dain Walker. So you already know that I geek out on all things copywriting and marketing, but did you know that branding is actually one of my favorite things to study and experiment with? I have loved branding for over 15 years. I knew that I wanted to focus on branding and messaging first and foremost, so I put a lot of time and effort into making sure that these things worked seamlessly together. And I believe that is a big reason why we have been able to grow a global community and a 7-figure brand so quickly. So I'm kind of revealing one of the questions I already answered. Does branding matter? Yes, but when it comes to building a brand from scratch and all of the things you need to consider before you do, there is no one better suited for this conversation than Dain Walker. Dain is a content creator, brand strategist, and the CEO of Australia's fastest growing branding agency, Rival. After a few short years in business, Rival now has 30 employees, and they have helped their clients with everything from brand strategy to identity to naming their brand and products, which is one of my favorite things to do. I'm talking creating killer logos, packaging, copywriting, content creation, like the whole gamut. So whether it's a fresh startup or a globally recognized brand, Dain is obsessed with disrupting the world of branding, which is probably why I freaking love him so much. And when I read this on his website, it really solidified that for me. Nailing a brand is like writing a hit song. It's more than words on a paper or a melody in your brain. It's the feeling you get when you dance on the kitchen table. It's the lyrics that live rent-free in your head, sticking like bubblegum to the underside of a vandalized school desk. Yes, this guy knows branding, and his content is some of the best that I have seen when it comes to building a personal brand online. And as you can see, a lot of other people agree. I cannot wait for you to hear what he has to say. No matter where you are on your business and brand building journey, whether you are just thinking about it, just getting started, or have been doing this for a while and you're looking to really maybe double down on your brand and messaging, you have to hear this. Here's the interview. Hey Dain, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so excited you're here.
I'm excited to be here. Let's do it. Yeah.
I was saying to you before I hit record that I have been fangirling over your Instagram for so long, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved it when I messaged you and you're like, I have copywriters on my team and they follow your stuff. I just think everything you do is so brilliant. I know you're coming in to my mastermind Rain next month to do a whole deep dive branding training with my Rainmakers, but I couldn't keep your wisdom to myself in my mastermind. I wanted to share, with the posse around the world. Today we are talking all about personal branding, and you are someone who is an expert in personal branding and, well, all types of branding actually. And that is evident on your Instagram and through everything you do. You heard his intro. So I'm going to just jump right in to the question that this is sort of a freebie because it's an easy one, but I'm really curious to hear your answer is how would you define branding?
It's a great question. I think there's a lot of different answers out there for what it is. I think for me, there's the dichotomy of words because you have brands, branding, brand strategy, and brand identity. I like to separate them because I think they're all slightly different. And, brand is what the market says you are. So you can think whatever you want about yourself, but then the market tells you what you are. So that's what I think brand is. Brand is the market's definition of you and what you do and who you are and where you are in the marketplace. We all have an opinion about Red Bull or Nike or Apple, and we all think we know what those brands are. Branding is for me, it's trying to define that trajectory. So what exactly is the position that you want to be in the marketplace? How do you want to be understood? What do you want people to think you are? And how do you actually start to begin to exercise that? So then brand strategy is creating the mud map or the roadmap or the blueprint on how to make that take place. And then the identity is how you look and how you feel, and everything from your colors to your logo and the outfit that your organization or that you wear. And trying to figure out how to get these things to work together is my life's body of work. It's why I built a company around branding. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what it is and what it means to build one, and how much freaking work it takes to do it right.
Oh my gosh, totally. And branding, like to your point, can seem like this very vague concept. I love how you broke it down into those different buckets, which makes so much sense to me. I'm curious where you see messaging falling under that brand umbrella, because I know a lot of people tend to think brand and they immediately think design, right? Like they think the colors, the font, the logo. But I also know that you post about messaging, taglines and different ways that you're communicating. And so how do you find, because we have a ton of copywriters in the Copy Posse, obviously, how do you find that copywriting and messaging fits into an overall brand, and how brand and copy sort of play off one another?
Yeah, I think if you look at like some famous examples, and we always use the big brands, but I think we all know what they are and it's easy to understand them. Like if you take a brand like Nike, the tagline "Just Do It" was a campaign that they ran at one point in time, and it was such a successful campaign that they were like, let's continue to use that. And it was originally a slogan, now it's a tagline. It was a call to action, and they realized it kind of embodies the entire ethos of Nike. So I think when it comes to messaging, you have brand messaging and then you have marketing messaging. And I think oftentimes they get convoluted or misunderstood one way or another. I think brand messaging is when you're communicating your story, the reason why you exist, the why a customer should listen to you or care. It's kind of the spirit of the brand. In Nike's case, it's like, well, we believe in the pursuit of greatness, right? So this is copy that it could be used for marketing purposes, but it's more about brand building. So brand building copy is copywriting that speaks to your entire market suite. It speaks to all of your audience. It's the thing that kind of threads them together. It's like, well, we can all just do it, right? Whether I'm playing basketball or tennis or running, that message applies to everyone. Whereas marketing messaging, I think, is a bit more specific. So then that might be about, okay, we need to activate this new campaign for a product that is specifically for running. So then let's write some campaign material around how, this shoe can help people perform and do better when it comes to running. So I think for me, the way I kind of separate it when I'm working with my team here is when we're writing copy for brands, the question really should be, how does this help their position in the market? How does this help people understand why they exist and why they should care? Whereas marketing messaging is a bit more like, let's get something specific to happen because of this copy. So are we trying to build persona, or are we trying to get them to do something? And I think that's where I kind of split the two, generally speaking.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what I teach, where I talk about brand voice, because especially in, like, I'll use my world as an example. I mean, there are so many people teaching marketing and messaging and copywriting online. And so when I created the Copy Posse, I knew I wanted it to be edgy. So my just do it is, let's dedouchify the internet. And because that is my really, like, the if I could sum up the Copy Posse in one sentence, that would be it. But that then trickles down into all of my messaging, because if I'm going to use words like dedouchify in my marketing and my, brand stories and everything that I talk about, then that kind of gives you a sense of the tone and the type of brand persona I'm trying to build. And so I love that distinction between, brand voice is sort of what makes you relatable, almost as if your brand was a person and you're trying to relate to your ideal audience. And then marketing is like, okay, how do I couple this brand persona with actual messaging that gets the point across of what I'm trying to do. I don't know if that sort of resonates with what you're
well
saying.
said. You said it perfectly. And I think, one of my favorite quotes is from David Ogilvy, where he says, if it reads like copy, write it again. And
Totally.
What I take from that is, oftentimes when we're writing messaging, especially in particular when we get a junior come in and they're starting to, work on their first project, they can get a little technical. They can get a little caught in the details. And I think what we try to do with the juniors is we try to help them realize, like, hey, how do we paint a picture in people's minds? Not just tell them the technical, because the technical is kind of boring. Like, how do we get them excited? How do we give them goosebumps? And I think one of the best things that we get our team to focus on is, imagine you're having a one-on-one conversation from the brand's voice perspective to the target audience. You're not speaking to the audience, you're speaking to an individual. So when we share this with our team, it kind of clicks in for them. Oh, okay, I have been writing for the audience. I need to write for the individual, and I need to write it in a way that's like you're having a conversation as the brand voice. And if you can take that approach and wear that hat, the copy comes out a lot better, and they start to find it easy to write copywriting because they're not worried about the technical anymore. They're just now having a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the secret sauce of a great copywriter. To kind of echo what you just said, back when I was the creative director at Mindvalley, we would get more formally trained writers come in to work at the company, and they were almost harder to train in the Mindvalley brand voice or any one of the other brands that Mindvalley represented. And it was almost easier to say, hey, forget what you know about technical, boring writing, and instead just put yourself in the shoes of the brand and who it is that you're speaking to. And so I always say to my community, yes, it's important to know grammar and all of that. Like, I'm not saying it's not important, but like, I laugh anytime someone calls out a typo because I'm like, I make typos all the time. For me, copywriting is about making someone feel something, even if it's anger over a typo, but it's not about writing perfectly. And I think that as soon as someone realizes that, and you can just sort of sink into the emotion of it, writing actually becomes a lot easier. And this is going to shift into a question I have, because you mentioned technical copywriting can be quite boring. I'm so curious to hear about your perspective on the way that brand and the importance of brand is shifting now with AI on the scene. Because from my perspective, I'm like, great, there's this awesome tool that can make our job as writers or designers easier. However, it can be really boring or completely off base if you're not careful. And so I'm just really curious how you're navigating this sort of post-AI world and how it pertains to branding.
I think it's an important conversation, and a lot of people have been worried about it for some time, even maybe before this really hit the headlines globally. Copywriters were rumbling in the background of like, hey, this technology is coming out. What does this mean for us? And I think it's pretty scary, right? And what I think it's done is the entrepreneur who's at the very onset of building their business, who's trying to bootstrap it, are harder to sell. Let's just be really honest, because this individual's now doing this themselves and tinkering with it. However, the back end of that is that entrepreneur is, and knowingly so, guessing what they should be doing. So that they've never needed so much consult. So in a weird way, I think we're seeing an increase in inquiry for copywriting because more people are attempting to do it themselves, realizing that it's difficult, and then reaching out for a consultation. So they might still write material or speed up the process, and there might even be some people in their ignorant bliss thinking that some of the stuff they're writing is great, even though it's not. But I don't know, I'm seeing more people reach out asking for help. Hey, I'm trying to do this myself. Clearly, it's difficult to use AI the right way. Can you please help me write better copy? Right. Regarding the actual copywriter themselves, I think one of the skills that they need to focus on now is how to sell. Because if you're a copywriter and you're a great, artistic writer, and you can write technically and you can write emotionally and you can do all of these different things, I think what is difficult for business owners right now is knowing how and what they're doing is the correct thing. So if you can get good at producing free media, starting a conversation with these small business owners and having them reach out and have a conversation with you, if you work on your sales skills, you're going to outperform the market radically. And a lot of copywriters I know struggle to sell. So I think if you can pick up that additional skill, you'll still, be able to pay the bills and do extremely well, because business owners need consultation. They need support. They need help. They need guidance, maybe more than they need the copywriting. And if you're giving them the guidance and the support, they're going to want to have you do the copy. They're not going to want to use the AI, because they're like, this person's helping me more than me trying to do it myself. So let me just have them help me with it. And I think, where we really need to put on the entrepreneurial cap right now is because, great, there's all these tools out there. In a weird way, it is bringing a lot of people into the creative space. It's bringing a lot of entrepreneurs into the creative side of business. It's just, I think it's shifting how the conversation takes place. It's not necessarily taking meat off the plate.
Yeah. Oh, you said so many things that resonate. I mean, first of all, we've actually seen an increase in people looking for copywriters on our own job board since AI. And I think it's exactly because of the point you made, where now creating online messaging in businesses is more accessible to business owners who maybe before would never even dream of doing it because it was too hard. And let's be honest, if you're an entrepreneur not making any money and you're bootstrapping it, you're not going to invest in hiring a copywriter anyway. You would just kind of hope to figure it out on your own until you got your business to a point where you're ready to invest in that skill set. But to your point, so many business owners are now using AI and then realizing, I think I'm missing the mark here. I need someone who's going to help me with the thinking side of things. And I mean, that's why I embed marketing training into absolutely everything I do. And my definition of copywriting is marketing plus writing, as opposed to just writing. Because everybody, I mean, a sixth grader could write a sales page and just sort of wing it if they didn't know what they were doing. But if you actually have the marketing, then it all makes sense and it flows, and it's speaking to the ideal audience. I mean, I could rant on this all day, but what I'm getting at, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is it's becoming easier and easier, right? So the bar has been lowered for people to essentially start businesses or build brands, so to speak. And so I'm really curious how you have seen branding shift in terms of how actually truly valuable it is to build a brand today.
I think you make a good point. The barrier to entry is really low. And I think this is really cool. Like, if we go back to our parents' generation, when they would clock off from their job and go home, they didn't have the ability to go on the internet and build a company. Whereas our generation, we take this for granted. We can go on the internet 24/7. If you have a job you hate, you can go home and you can freelance, and you can, post yourself in job boards, and you can produce media and produce content, and the world's seeing it in live time. And when the Americas are asleep, the Australias are open. Like, what an exciting time to live. And I think that, if we just compare that to our parents' generation, man, they had it way harder than us. Imagine being a copywriter back then. My God. So I think that, with everything that's happening right now, the barrier to entry is really low, which is really exciting. It means a lot of new people that didn't think they could play are now playing. And just to add to that, a lot of people don't realize this, but 3.7 billion people are going to be joining the internet in the next 3 years with Starlink and everything else that's happening. Like, the internet's going to get a lot louder, a lot busier, and a lot more crazy. And I think, what I'm seeing happen is, because a lot of new people are coming into play, they're learning the same business lessons we all learn. Okay, business is actually hard. Getting customers is actually difficult. Making sure the customer's happy isn't an easy thing to do. Producing social media content kind of sucks sometimes. I think we're all learning these lessons together, and what business owners are needing, they might be reaching out for a need with copywriting. What they really need is someone in their corner who's cheerleading whatever they're doing and helping them solve their problems. And I think copywriters are extremely intelligent people. They live between creativity and marketing and like research. And I think that if you can lean in and help business owners with their strategy and their fundamentals, then it's going to be really easy to sell the copywriting. Because we tell this to our customers: you're not buying graphic design from us, you're not buying the logo and the colors and the fonts. The design has a job to do, and that's to live out the strategy. Right? A customer might come to you and say, I need copywriting for XYZ. But then if you look under the hood and go, okay, but who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Why is it this audience, not that audience? How come you're focusing on these values? Have you explored trying to create new values? Why is your voice this? Have you tried researching other voices? And if the customer or the business owner is like, I don't know this kind of stuff, they're basically in the palm of your hand and they need strategy. And you can sell strategy, you can sell research, and I would debate that that's even more valuable to them than the copywriting. Because if a business owner is looking at you to get a copywriting job done, great, you can make money for that. But what about if you become an invaluable business consult to them, to help them with their strategy, a thought partner? They're going to pay you more, they're going to value you more, and then when you write copy, they're going to ask you what you think versus tell you to rewrite it for some nonsensical reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, and let's be honest too, right? Like, we talk about this barrier to entry being lowered, meaning everybody can start a business, which means, what is even niche anymore? Because there's so many people doing so many things online now that the barrier to entry is lower. And so I really think brand becomes what sets you apart from other people. I truly believe that the reason why the Copy Posse grew at the rate that it did is because I just leaned so hard into being this feisty, sassy little disruptor. And that resonated with the people who were looking for a new voice to follow in this industry. And so I'm curious, and I know you talk a lot about the difference between corporate branding and personal branding. I want to talk about that a bit right now because, I have a brand, Copy Posse, but then I also have a personal brand. But what is truly the difference between, these two different types of branding?
So personal branding versus corporate branding?
Yeah.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah. What is the difference between personal branding and corporate branding? Are they treated differently, or is it all kind of one and the same?
I think that branding it's the same set of principles. I think they're applied differently. I think personal branding, for me, it's, again, they both cross-pollinate, they both translate. But I think if you look at it as more of a sliding scale, a personal brand is more about your character, whereas a company brand is more about your capability, right? I go to a company because I want them to be capable of solving my problem. Mm-hmm. I go to an individual because I like their character, right? So I might go to you because I really like your sassy, disruptive nature. That's your character. I'm attracted to that. Versus a company, it's well, Apple, I know that they have this ecosystem that I can trust. It's simplistic and it's relied upon. They're capable of, looking after my needs. So business is more about capability. Personal is more about character. The other one is personal brand is typically more conversational than a company brand. A company brand, no matter how much they try, they're still going to come across as promotional or transactional. It just comes with the logo. It comes with the nature of the beast. And I think if you run a corporation, people just expect it to be trying to sell them something. Whereas you can be a personal brand and give away educational resources and people don't even realize you're selling to them. They just think they're in a conversation with a human being. So I think the story component can be louder and stronger with a personal brand. You can lean more into your failures. Whereas a company, you don't really want to hear a company talking about their failures. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe, but not as much as an individual. I think we like individuals because they've failed, they've overcome, they're flawed. We love people that aren't perfect. If you look at someone controversial like Conor McGregor, he's not a perfect character, but that's why we love him so much. And I think that companies, if they're imperfect, unfortunately, it's more of a hindrance than something that's going to help them. So I think there's just these nuance differences. And I think the big one is a personal brand, in my opinion, can scale a social media brand a hell of a lot quicker than a corporation or a company ever could.
Yeah.
If you're trying to build your company through a name or an enterprise versus just you showing up with your face and teaching yourself, you're going to see your personal brand 400x outperform a company brand, because on social media, we follow people. We don't like to follow corporations. Or if we do follow corporations, we follow the person behind it.
Yeah.
Right? We love Steve Jobs behind Apple, or Richard Branson behind Virgin, or Tim Cook behind Apple, or Oprah Winfrey behind her organizations. I think we love to follow people because for two reasons. One, we follow people we want to become like, or we follow people we feel like we already are like. That's easier to create a chemistry or a romance than it is for a corporation to say we're capable at solving your problem.
Yeah. I love that you said that because it echoes. So I was recently chatting with a friend who had and exited a very large marketing brand that was a brand, but he was very much like the face of the brand, like I am for Copy Posse. And, that went amazingly well. And then he's like, okay, it's time for me to launch my next endeavor. And despite the fact that he had this very well-known name in the marketing industry, he decided to launch a brand that was just an organization title, right? A brand name. Whoops, my earpod's falling out.
Oh,
Whoop, got excited there. A faceless brand, if you will. And he recently, I saw him speak on stage at an event where he said that is the biggest mistake I could have made, because what he was realizing was the reason why his first company was so successful, even though it still was a brand, is he was backing it up with himself, with his own stories and his entrepreneurial journey, and it took off. And then he realized, like a lot of entrepreneurs, like, I don't want to be the dancing monkey anymore. I want to remove myself. But honestly, it was doing a disservice. And now he's starting to show up again as the face behind this new company. And I say this a lot to people in my community, whether they're new business owners and they want to launch a brand, like Copy Posse, for example. They see that I kind of am leading with a brand name and they think, oh, in order to be taken seriously, and this happens with copywriters too. I mean, I'll have someone who starts a copywriting business, and rather than just be their name, they come up with some, fancy copywriting brand, and they try to have a logo, and they try to spend all this time, to be honest, like, which we can, again, I can go on a rant about this, all this time trying to create a brand that looks very important and very corporate and like, I can help you. And the number one thing I always say is like, forget all of that. Like, just be you, show up as you, build your personal brand. And then of course, there's a lot that you can do to pivot into more of a larger brand. But even you, I mean, you have a company, Rival Brands, and everyone knows that it's you behind that brand. And so I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think sometimes when business owners are new, they don't think that they themselves are valuable enough to show up as themselves and actually be taken seriously. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've seen similar stories happen.
No, I would agree with you. I think, there are cases where companies can blow up and do enormous things. But
Right.
In particular, in the creative space, if we go, okay, in the creative space, copywriters, graphic designers, freelancers, what have you, I think that the chasm between, freelancer and agency is pretty freaking wide. Mm-hmm. I think I'm an anomaly. We built Rival from 0 to 30 employees in 4 years, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. The reason it happened is not because of Rival's branding. It happened because of my branding. So yes. 90% of the leads, even today, that are generated and onboarded with Rival are coming on because they're like, I know Dain, I follow his content. I just know he happens to run an agency. If that's the road I have to take, I'll take that road. If Rival didn't exist and it was just Dain Walker, I'd be just as successful. I think, for me, I wanted to build the feeling that the team were like, we're in this together, versus it all being under my name. So yeah, I think, only now at year 4, because we're spending a lot of money on advertising, is Rival getting its own reputation. It's starting to win its own rewards. It's starting to become an industry name. It's starting to become a threat to our competitors. They're like, who the hell are these Rival guys? So only now, after 4 years of like insane amounts of work and, $1 million plus in ad spend, is it established? So I think if you're in the position where you're 0 to 30, it's really not going to help you. If anything, it's just going to be a distraction. And I think if you're a freelancer and you get a small pod of 2 or 3 people that you're working with or contracting with or whatever, lean into your name, because I think a business owner wants to work with an individual more than they want to work with a corporation.
100%.
So,
I mean,
yeah,
I tell my students all the time, like, you guys don't pretend you're a one-person agency, because nobody wants to nobody, unless you're a bigger organization and have the spend. If you're a small business owner, like, you want a thought partner, like we talked about earlier, and you want to hire a person. And so I love that you shared that, because I think it takes the pressure off. And really, the lesson here for everybody is, whether you're selling services or you're launching a course or you're launching your program, or unless you're doing maybe an e-commerce brand or something that's very product centric, you are valuable, like you as you are, and really lean into that, because it is so much easier to show up as yourself than to try to like front as an agency or an organization or something that you're not. And then it also allows you room to pivot. Like, I was AlexCatoni.com working with all of my clients, and I didn't want to pigeonhole myself necessarily into one particular type of business. That allowed me to really build my authority as a person, as a copywriter, as a marketer, and then I started the Copy Posse. And so I think it's easy to look at people like what you're doing, Dain, or what I'm doing, and go, oh, I need to build a brand in order to be successful. But what you don't know is that it all started by us just showing up as ourselves. So I love that you said that.
You're right on the money there, because I think, oftentimes we think that we get pigeonholed. And, my first year, I was a content creator for hire. And here's the interesting thing is, I had more inquiries in the first 2 years of business than I've had in the last 3. And I believe it's because when you're starting and you're producing amazing content, but your page isn't huge, people think you're accessible. When they look at my page now and they see 700,000 followers, there's like, no way this guy's gonna read my DM, right? Yeah. So actually, I would use it to your advantage. If you're like, oh, I don't want to, I don't have any followers. I don't want to be looked at as like a small, tiny person in the scheme of things. But if you're producing stellar content and it's amazing, people land on your page and go, they've only got 2,000 followers. What the hell? This is ridiculous. This person's so good. They're gonna DM you and be like, I can't believe I found this hidden gem. I'm gonna hire them. I hope that I can afford them. And I think that you can use that to your advantage. So whatever your position is, use it. I think, if I could go back and get the same amount of volume of inquiring leads I had in the first 2 years, I'd sign me up. I think, having a huge page isn't all out that it's cut out to be.
I agree.
When it comes to lead inquiry. Yeah.
I miss the days of like a solid like 10,000 followers, like I do agree. It completely changes. And, you mentioned content creation is kind of what you look for when you're like, or what business owners look for when they're looking to hire. I was the same. I mean, if I have a copywriter who messages me saying, hey, I can write copy for you, and their page is just sort of faceless with a bunch of like repurposed tips or content, I'm kind of like, nope. But if they're just a regular person and I can see on their Instagram that, oh, look, they're a mom, and oh, look, they like to go hiking, or oh, look, there's a picture of their dog, and then I read the captions and they're beautifully written, I'm like, there's the hidden gem. And so I think sometimes we try too hard to be something we're not, because we just assume we know what our clients are looking for. And it's quite often the opposite. So I love that you shared that. And I have one sort of final question to wrap up, because we've kind of been talking about content creation. I'm curious how you plan your content, and if you do a mix of like educational type of content, entertainment type of content. What's the sort of the difference, and how do you find that balance to really show up, let's just say on Instagram as an example?
Yeah, so I think one thing I try to get people to focus on, so I still have clients that we help with their personal branding. So we work with a lot of, celebrities and musicians and, different artists, like in the acting space or in the comedic space, with their content. And I think entertainment, it's a little different. I think entertainment, you really have to be like building out your thing, right? If you're a rap artist, it's all that. If you're a stand-up comic, it's all that, right? But I think if you're educating, I try to get people to educate within what I call the 5 key themes. So, and we write about this in the book, and we're trying to get people to focus, okay, those things can change. So like, for example, on my social media page, I teach, brand design, brand strategy. I also teach like marketing. I also teach like psychology, like how brands psychologically can persuade and influence you. And something we're diving into at the moment is like the Q&A live sessions. So it's like, okay, these are the 5 kind of things we're doing. What you want to do is you want to rinse and repeat those 5 things enough until you're like, okay, out of these 5 things, this one's not performing very well. And then we swap that out. So like I try to always have 5 things that we're trying to test. And then when something gets old, you know, it might be a good theme and it might last you 6 months, but then people are like tired of hearing about it. So then you swap it out. So for me, I'm always testing and experimenting new things because I think what can happen on social media is the algorithm changes. Your audience gets tired of hearing the same thing, seeing you shop the same way so many times. It's like, how many times can you skin a cat, right? So then you always have to go, okay, let me swap that theme out, bring a new one in and deploy that for a while and then bring this other one back. So for me, I would encourage people to experiment, but try to stick to 5 topics, 5 talking points. Because if you take, let's just say, okay, marketing copywriting, okay, maybe you've got 100 pieces of content about that before you run out of ideas or start to recycle old ideas. So yeah, for me, content at the moment, one thing we're testing heavily is this live Q&A stuff where we're actually on stage, we're in front of an audience, people are asking questions, we're giving feedback on it. We're then also simultaneously testing like 90-second lessons. We're in a stage where we're tinkering because the algorithm seems to be in disarray. So we're just trying to keep up
constantly.
Finding the new wave because there's no real wave at the moment. I don't know if you caught the carousel wave 4 years ago, but we're kind of waiting. Like, what's the next thing that could really really take off for us?
Something that we do, which is similar, like we have sort of the content pillars that we talk about. We also do a mix of just pure education and then also really showing people who I am, because we might do a post that is, you know, me talking about a trip I did or a lesson I learned. And often those will get the highest engagement, whereas sort of the educational posts we find get the most saves and shares. And then we'll do some longer form content. And I'm curious if you're going to see this too, is some of the longer form content or maybe these live Q&As, the viewership is lower, but because it's the people who are watching are so committed, you're getting a lot more, you know, engagement in the chats, you're starting conversations in the DMs. And we really try to kind of like you experiment and just see, okay, what's working, and also knowing that different types of content have different goals. And so I love hearing you talk about that, and that could be a whole other topic at some point. But
no, I think you said something important in there, which is the reshares. I think that, okay, depending on what your objective is, right? Like if you're trying to get sales, it depends on how you want to look at that. And I think sales usually comes down to engagement, like how many people are actually commenting, how many people are actually like touching that piece of content. The higher that is, the more engagement. One metric that I really like to focus on most is the shareability, right? So if I post a piece of content and it gets 15,000 reshares, I'm like, we hit the money. Like that's where the real money is, because if we get 15,000 people got a DM ping, or I was featured on a story where I got seen, the eyeballs and the value of that attention is enormous for us, right? Because the way I see it on social media is so many people produce media purely with the intent to make money. The reason I don't like that is it kills the creativity. If you produce media purely like, I really want to blow people's minds and give them an aha moment, and I want to be a dealer of dopamine, I want to get people fired up about branding. If that's your focus more than the money, what happens is you actually end up getting the money anyway, because you're producing content that hits that dopamine in people and gets them hooked on watching more of your content. Because what gets a reshare? There's only 7 things that will get someone to share something. You see it and you go, that's familiar. I just had that conversation with my girlfriend or with my business partner, and I'm going to ping them up. The familiarity piece is big. And this is why memes are huge. This is why, like, you know, skits are huge, because it's like you want to tag your friend and send it to someone else to make him laugh.
Relatable, yeah.
Right? It's relatable. The second one is, the reason that someone would share something is it's prolific. It gave them goosebumps. It was like, whoa, why have I never heard that before? I've never thought about it from that perspective. It's like Simon Sinek talking about, the golden circle, right? Start with why. You're like, wow, the way he says it is just like, whoa, it's just drawing circles on a and like for us branders, we're like, yeah, we knew this, but it's just how he delivered it was like so powerful. So we're going to think about like what's humorous, what's dangerous, what's sexy. Like we got to strike an emotional chord. And if you can do that, controversy, right? If you can strike these emotional threads, people will send it. Even if they hate you, they'll still send it. So some of my most viral posts.
Loser.
Yeah, check out this loser. It happened to me on LinkedIn. I think one of my most viral LinkedIn posts, I had, people in marketing like attacking me, and it was great because I had all this attention.
Thank you.
So I think, when it comes down to it, producing media should come from a place of I want to help people and I want to inspire people and I want them to feel good, but you have to get that reshare. I think if you can get the reshare, your page will grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So good. Dain, I cannot wait to go deeper into all this stuff with you next month inside the Rain Clubhouse. We're going to wrap up this interview. It was freaking amazing. Before we go, I would love to just ask you about your book because you mentioned it and I know it's full of wisdom, just like this interview was. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your book and where people can go find it.
Yeah, so we put up a post, I think this is going back maybe a year and a bit ago, where I just said, look, I'm going to write a book about personal branding. What are the biggest issues that you have? And we had over 800 or 900 odd comments of people sharing their problem. We sat down, we reverse engineered all of these problems, right? Okay. Just total nerd here. And we found out there was like 5 things. There was really 5 things said 900 different ways. It was, I'm scared. Where do I start? How do I find my niche, my thing? How do I make money out of this stuff? And is it really all worth it? So then we're like, okay, these are the 5 big things that we need to tackle with the book. So in the book, I tried to approach it from a very human perspective. So I opened the book up talking about where we are now. Okay, we worked with Culture Kings, we worked with these grandiose, big international brands. Look at me go. Then chapter 2, I rip him back down to earth. And I'm like, this is how it started. I was in debt. I was sleeping, on a mattress on the floor, and we could barely afford fuel. And how I went from that to the latter using personal brands. So we unpack every stage of building a personal brand, what it took me from the beginning to where it is now. I deploy my numbers, how much I charge for things. I really go into the details.
Love that.
And each chapter has an exercise that someone can go and do, as well as a QR code where they can go download other stuff. But the 90-day brand plan, it's all about how to get out of your funk in 90 days and produce content that generates income, and how to do it quickly.
Amazing. I will be reading that absolutely because like I said, I love everything you do. We will link to that in the description box below, along with your Instagram, which I said I fangirl over, and any other links for people to go check out everything you do. Dain, thank you so freaking much. I know we could have talked for another hour. I love your work and everything that you teach. So thank you so much for being here to share it with the posse.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.
Chat soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed that video, make sure to check out the next one from me right here. And you can click right here to get a free gift. Listen to this. Average person is bombarded with 10,000 marketing messages every single day, which begs the question, in a world where attention is the most valuable commodity, how do you command it instead of demand it? In this video, I'm gonna walk you through how to create a spectacular, never the same, totally unique brand voice that helps you stand out. Keep watching.